Hey friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn, and today I am going to make a pretty simple but easy, fun, beautiful mini album. And I'm gonna make it out of my Your Paper Insider subscription box. This is box number 13. I've actually already opened it because I wanted to take a sneaky peek and maybe plan ahead a little bit about which papers I would use and how to best use them. One of the nice things about the Your Paper Insider subscription is that it's a quarterly subscription, so it's not hitting your wallet every single month, just filling your stash with more things to craft with than you could possibly use up. So you do have a nice generous 3 months to get through the supply of specially curated cardstock, specialty papers, really unique things that maybe you wouldn't otherwise buy for yourself or seek out. And the nice thing about it is that because you only have one sheet of each, it's really easy to work your way through this pretty generous supply of specialty papers and cardstock by the time your next subscription box arrives to your doorstep. So these boxes are really lovely. You can get them as a one-off or sign up month to month or even year to year for a savings. And if you stay tuned to the end, I'll tell you all about how you can win one of these for free. So let me first give you a quick flip through. If you want to pause to actually read all of the names, I can hold this up close so that you can get all of the names of these. And you can always pause and slow down, speed up the videos as you like. One of the things that Your Paper Insider always includes is a little bit of a freebie. So with box number 13, the freebie is this Aurora origami paper, 6x6. So that's a really lovely extra bonus free gift. In no particular order, it's just how this ended up sorting once I was done. But we have some gorgeous, just a very nice variety of specialty papers and cardstocks. This one's really beautiful. It's double-sided even. And some of them are more of a mulberry paper weight, and then some are a heavier weight cardstock. There's different finishes from glitter to glossy to this is vellum even with some pinstripe detail. And there's different types of glitter too. So this is a really smooth glitter. This is a very high gloss glitter. And there's another glitter here which feels a little bit chunkier. Here's some pearlescent. This is a colored vellum. And this is more of a paperweight, but it's pearlescent as well. This is pretty cool. I haven't seen anything like that. Here's the chunkier glitter where you can even feel the texture, whereas the other two glitters are smooth. This one feels coated. It's very plasticky. Some hollow paper. And then getting down to the end here are... I'll stack them this even though it'll cover up. I think I'm going to use these. They're pretty heavyweight cardstocks, solid color. And I think these are going to be my page bases. This is a little bit thinner than the others, but they're going to make for really nice, sturdy page bases and just a nice background to start building my little mini album pages with. So here's a little quick glimpse at a project I'm going to revisit. So the reason why this mini album is going to be so quick and easy is because I'm going to do double loop binding. I'm going to make this style of binding, but using my universal cinch, and I am going to go for something a little bit chunkier so that, like, this is already feeling like it's wanting to be a good like 3/4 inch at least. Like it's expanding well above that, but I think because it's being pinched so much here. So I think if I gave it maybe 3/4 of an inch on this side, that's going to be plenty of room. And this is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 7 page bases. I think I'm going to aim for that as well because I have 7 colors here that kind of take me through like a little bit of a holiday vibe, Christmas vibe, winter, Christmas, holiday, etc. So I know we're past Christmas, but I think it'll be nice, and maybe I can get a good jump start on my holiday gifts for next year. So I'm gonna clear this out and we'll get started. I'll make the page bases to start. Okay, so here is my game plan. I think what I'm going to do is actually make 2 albums, and I decided to switch, like separate out the colorways, so it'll be sort of more a winter blues and that nice gray, and then maybe your more traditional Christmas colors. I opted to take out the pink because I don't want this to be overly chunky. So 6 page bases, 2 of each color is what I'm aiming for. And also because that pink cardstock was a little bit lighter weight than these ones. So what I'm going to do is, what I've already done is these started out as 8.5 by 11, and I just cut them in half as if I was going to make an A2 size card. So along the 11-inch edge, I cut in half at 5.5 inches, and now along the 8.5-inch edge, I will score it in half at 4.25, and I've already scored all of the other ones. So give that a good score line. These cardstocks are nice and pretty thick. They're not super duper heavyweight, but they certainly aren't flimsy. And in fact, if you look at the little cheat sheet that tells you the name of all of the cardstocks, it will also tell you the weight of all of these. Now, it's from a variety of different brands. These cardstocks, they aren't all going to be the exact same thickness, but that's totally okay. I just don't want anything. This is like probably the thickest of them all. And in some ways you don't want anything too terribly thick, especially if you're going to be adding, a lot of photos and layers and whatnot. But one out of the bunch isn't too bad. And I did get a little bit of cracking here. Not a problem. One of the reasons why we score is so that you can prevent cracking. But if you get a little bit of cracking, just take your bone folder and rub against it. Sometimes that will help to kind of smush the paper back into itself. And the cracking is going to be a little bit less noticeable. I mean, you can see it cracked like right around there-ish. But with some burnishing, kind of took that away. If it's very, very badly cracked, you can add a really good quality PVA glue. And then give that a little bit, rub that PVA glue in. And then give it a good burnish. And that will help to strengthen it again, because if it's too badly cracked, it might actually weaken the fold. Okay, so I've got all of my pages for this first album folded in half. And remember, I'm going to use my universal cinch to bind it along this open edge here. And so what I want to do is turn each of these since it's already folded in half, into a pocket page. But I only really need to seal up the bottom edge because our wires will seal this edge, the two open ends there. This is already folded, so the outside edge is already sealed. So to complete our pocket, we just need a line of glue at the bottom. I like to use a liquid glue for this because then when you stick something in, it's not going to, it won't get stuck in, you know, some dry adhesive tape. So you just need a thin bead, and you don't have to go super duper close to the edge because this, once we burnish this adhesive, it's going to spread a little bit. But a liquid adhesive is not only going to dry completely, it'll be permanent, and it's going to allow you to put an ever so thin amount, because it would be really challenging if you don't have a nice thin line of dry adhesive tape. It would be pretty challenging to put a thin dry adhesive here if you don't have like 1/8 inch, for example. And this way we can maximize the size of our pocket. Just give that a really good burnish, and I'll burnish it from both sides. Burnishing helps to really firm up the contact, really pushing those two sheets of paper together, but it also helps to spread out the glue so that you have really good adhesion of surface area. And these cardstocks are thick enough that I'm not worried at all about glue lines, but burnishing will help you prevent glue lines as well, since it will spread it out. I'm not going all the way to the edge here because I know on this end things are going to get cinched together, so I don't want it. I don't think glue would make it all the way to the, or the holes would make it all the way to the end there, but all the same, I don't want the potential for any glue to gum up the works of my cinch punch. So that's why I'm actually not taking the glue all the way to the edge. I'm leaving about 1/2 inch from the edge that the binding will happen, and that should be plenty. Plenty of space to allow for the hinges, and along the end, if anything kind of oozed out, you just want to make sure that you smooth that out, clean that up a little bit. I'm using Barely Art Glue, which is really good, nice and strong. It's very low water content, so it will be it's very quick grabbing, and will be strong and quick drying as well. Plus, Barely Art Glue is also archival safe, so if you are making this as a mini album for photos in particular, then it'll be good. You don't have to worry about your photos yellowing. So, and you don't necessarily have to be doing this on the scoreboard like I am. So there's that. Okay. So I'm going to keep on doing the rest of the pages for this album and for my more Christmassy one as well. And I'll come back for the next step. Okay, I've got them all done and stacked up here. Now we do want to make sure that the openings are all at the top and to the left, because these are going to be top loading pockets. A little bit like that. And just want to take a quick moment, get them all sorted, and then also put them kind of in the order that I want the pages to flow also. And in the case of the more Christmassy one, I think I like this really bright green against the red. Maybe we'll have the red in the middle, something like that. And then so think about also when you flip through the album, you're gonna see the pages next to each other. So like if you like or prefer the look of the two greens right next to each other, then you may want to order it that way. If you're like me, you could put the two colors like side by side so that you get a spread that looks like that. But if you prefer, you could also alternate so that you're always getting say like a mix match of pages. So up to you. You can decide the order, but you do want to decide that order before you cinch. Not that it is impossible to fix afterwards, just that it is going to be a little bit wasteful because you might have to just uncoil the wire and then toss the previous one. So one of the things, a couple of things that I want to do in terms of, these are going to be for photos, but I do want to maybe do photo mats that you could tuck inside so that, you know, that's an option for even more photos or maybe a spot of journaling. So there's a couple of different things that maybe you want to keep in mind when you go about designing your pocket page base, because it's going to be a little bit easier to access your photo mats if you choose to do photo mats if you have either a thumb notch and then your photo mat can stay flush to the top but you can still have access to grab it and pull it out. Or with this one, what I did was I added tabs to the top so that my pages could be decorated in full without like a little notch cut out, and I would still have something to grab the photo mat and pull it out. So ultimately you need a way to be able to grab your photo mat out, whether that's a tab that extends above your page or a thumb notch cut out of your page. Maybe there's other things, creative things that you can think of as well, but those are sort of the two very basic ways of formatting or, you know, creating the base for your album pages. And since I just showed an example of a tab, or maybe I'll do one of each, but there are trade-offs, because if you cut into this, that might disrupt how you decorate the pages. But it's going to make it easier for everything to sit within your album cover. So that's one thing that's going to be kind of nice, because then I don't have these tabs sticking out of my cover, which if you don't like the look of that, maybe this option will be better for you. So I'll definitely do one where I punch out the thumb notch, but that's going to mean that we kind of need to either keep the pages a bit on the plain side or find ways to decorate it where, you know, it doesn't really matter that there's a notch cut out of it. And that's not like a very terribly difficult challenge, but it's just a consideration to keep in mind. Since I've already folded this, I do want something a little heavy duty and in order to punch the holes. And so what I want to do is just mark the halfway point. So I'll line this up, and that's about the halfway point there. I don't mind if it's not super perfect, because I'm gonna eyeball this part as well. This is 1 inch. It's a Fun Stamper's Journey punch, and all I'm gonna do is just aim to get about half of the circle covered, and that line about at the halfway part. So if you wanted, you could do like on this one, this is 1.5, which I kind of feel like might be too big of a thumb notch, because that's a huge thumb notch. But what I did on this one is I actually took a Sharpie and I punched, oh, let me just take a moment and do it so you can see. All I did was I punched this out of just some scrap paper, folded it in half like that, and then I fold it in half again, bringing these two ends to one another. So bring those two ends to meet up. So your two previous folds, you want to bring those two to meet up, and then that way you have like this exactly split in 4. Okay. Now all I need to do, if I want to add little reference marks, is it's a little bit easier to do this not in the holder there. So all I need to do is just put this in here. Okay. And then where my fold lines are, just put use a little Sharpie. Let's see. I wish I had a wider Sharpie. Okay. Maybe I'll use, this is the only one I have that's wide. It'll be red. And then just do my best to kind of level it. If you really want to make sure it's level, you can take a T-square and then kind of rotate this so that it's nice and level with that. It's tough, but the thing is that you can always rotate your paper inside the punch a little bit. So if it's not perfect, it's not the end of the world. And then give it a little mark. Give that a little mark. And then I can mark here and here. And basically just marking where the score lines are. See? And that's it. So now I have a nice reference if I wanted to make sure that I was punching exactly, half circle or near enough to half circles. So just give it a shake, that will fall right back out. And okay, so now when we go to line this up, and I do want to punch through both sides. That's what's going to make it easy to grip. So now what I can do is I can line the edge of my page base with my these two Sharpie marks, and I can try to line this pencil mark with that line there. So then I'm like centered and I'm getting a nice half circle. So if I push this way, then I'm not going to be centered on my page base anymore. So I just want to bring that over. And it's still a little bit of a guesstimate, but it's going to be a lot closer than if I didn't have the marks. So it's just meant to be a guide to get your eyeballing a little bit closer. And when it seems like everything is in the right spot, then I can just punch. And there we have it. Nice clean punch through both layers. And this is one of the thicker cardstocks. So now that you have one done, the other option, if you didn't want to mark up your thing like that, the other option is you can use this now as a template trace out your next one, and then when you slot this in, just look for your pencil line and position it so that your punch will basically punch out your pencil marks. See? So there you have it. And it may not be perfect, but it'll be pretty darn close. So I'm just gonna, and what I like to do if I'm using something as a template, always use the same one as your template. Because if I use this as a template for this, and it's a little bit off, and then I use this as the template for my next one, and then that becomes a little bit off, and then I use this for the next one, and that's a little bit off. Like, every little bit off becomes greater and greater until when you get to the end, it could be off in a perceptible way. So whatever you're choosing to be your template, if you're a little bit off, it's not that big a deal, because you're just going to be a smidge off on each one, as opposed to being a smidge off and having that cascade to being at the end maybe more than a smidge off. So I'll just go ahead and take a moment. It's easier, this is easier, I feel, than finding the halfway mark. And so there we go. I'll just trace this right onto, and you do want to make sure that you are punching through the top opening, because this is going to be the little, once we get a photo mat in here, this thumb nudge helps us so that we can just pinch the whatever's the photo mat and pull it right out. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this for the rest of this album. And maybe I'll do the same with this, and then I'll come back when they're all done. All right, so let's just focus on this album, and I'll share the second album that I make later, just in case I decide to do something a little bit different. I wanted to go ahead and finish this one end to end. So here's my thinking. I think I'll put it in this order here. And next up is the cover. I think this might be a really great album for maybe, now that we're past the holidays, perhaps it would be good for actually taking some of those holiday photos that you maybe just photographed on your camera or on your phone, more likely, get some of those printed and, you know, maybe fill out this album, because it's not a lot of pages. It's going to end up being 6-page bases, which gives you front and back the ability to add 12 photos. But really, the first one, yeah, I think I'll put a photo on the first one too. That might be like the family photo, for example, and then breaking into, like, you know, special moments. So there's 12 front and back, plus the photo mat opportunity as well. So that could be an extra photo or two. But what I'm thinking is that the photo mat more likely might be a good place for some journaling. So you could tuck in an extra photo there, or you could maybe write a little bit about the moment that is pictured or captured on these pages. So what I want to do is create, because I feel like this, if it's going to contain holiday memories, I feel like it should be built to last. So I've got some medium weight chipboard in black. This is from Graphic 45, and I think it's 30-point chipboard. So pretty nice stuff here. And I am going to make a wrapped cover. Now, I cut this intentionally knowing that it's going to be bound, spiral bound on the left edge. And so there's going to be an extra 1/8 of an inch all the way around the other 3 edges. So this is cut to, our pages are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So this is cut to 5 3/4 tall. And it only needs to go out by 1/8 of an inch because on this side everything is going to be bound flush. So this ends up being 4 3/8. So that's the dimension for the wrapped cover. I've already made the back cover, so it's going to look a little something like this, and then it's going to get wrapped around, and then the glue tabs from the green get hidden by an extra piece of, in this case, pearlescent cardstock that came straight from the Your Paper Insider box, and box 13 that is. For the cover though, I thought we'd go a little extra fancy and use the gold glitter cardstock. And so let's start off. I like with my albums to use a nice strong adhesive. So this is my score tape by Sukwang, and I'm just going to go this way, and I'll have a strip that I can use later. And that way it'll just be one piece. Oftentimes it can be more cost effective to buy tape on wider sheets or wider rolls like this. So this is a 5-inch roll. And as compared to like a 1/4-inch roll, for example. And then especially for covers like this, you can get edge to edge full coverage, and that way you know your cover isn't going to buckle or have any glue lines or anything. You don't have to worry about any of that. And this is one of, if not the strongest dry adhesive tapes that I know, so I don't worry too much about it not having any liquid adhesive on this front cover, because this is a really strong tape. Now sometimes with a dry adhesive, especially in a more humid climate, you might find that it dries out completely and then it loses its stick. So that can happen in some climates, but this is going to get wrapped around, and then another layer of adhesive is going to be on top. So I like to burnish this on the side that's essentially closest to the adhesive, but I don't want to scratch up this really gorgeous paper. So I'm going to put a blue shop towel over so that I can burnish aggressively, but not have to worry about even though this is a bone folder, Teflon bone folder, I still just want to make sure I don't accidentally scratch that. Now, I have a tool for this, but you don't necessarily need to use a tool like this. You could just eyeball it. But since I have the tool, I'm going to use it. I don't use it very often, but it helps you to cut a mitered corner so that when these glue tabs fold over, you don't have an excessive amount of cardstock that gets bunched up in that corner. And if you don't have such a tool as this, just eyeball about 45 degrees there, and leave about 1/8 of an inch away from the corner of the chipboard, because you want to make sure that the corner actually gets fully wrapped. So you don't want to cut right up to the chipboard, because then the chipboard won't actually be fully wrapped. It'll be exposed right at that tip. And we want this to look nice and seamless. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to get a little bit of dry adhesive as close to the edge as possible on these glue tabs. So I'm putting this line, it's about 1/4 inch, as close to the outer edge as possible. I'm not really too worried about this lifting at all because it's going to entirely be covered with another piece of cardstock before we're done. But it's nice just to get into these good practices, good habits, and then that way it comes sort of second nature. I always like to put my dry adhesive as close to the outer edge as possible because then if I'm using a combination of liquid adhesive with it, then I don't have to get my liquid adhesive very close to those outside edges, and that keeps them contained, keeps it from oozing outward. And it also gives me nice adhesion on those outer edges, which if they weren't covered up like they will be in this case, it'll actually help to prevent the those outer edges from potentially snagging. And so what I want to do is just gently start to coax each of these flaps. You don't want to, I didn't score this for a reason because this chipboard is medium weight, so there is going to be a little bit of thickness to it. So if I scored it exactly at the dimensions I cut it to, likely it would be off by the time I get to this point. And so I prefer to just coax this glue tab. I'm going to put a line of liquid adhesive right up against the chipboard and a little bit inside of this tab. And then just gradually start to bring it closer and closer until you feel like you can bring it all the way down. And because there's the double-sided dry adhesive, that should grab pretty quickly. If you get any liquid adhesive that oozes out, you can just wipe it. But most of this glue tab is going to get covered anyhow with that pearlescent paper. So I like to do two sides and then the other two sides. So put a small line of adhesive right up against the chipboard and then maybe another line of adhesive right inside. And we'll continue to do the same thing. Just gradually coax this. It helps to just soften the paper. Although this particular glitter cardstock, it feels like it's coated with something. But it die cuts beautifully. I'll show you how I know in a moment when we get to decorating our pages. For now, I've just set that aside. Because before I start decorating, I kind of want to see what it looks like with the wires before we compose the rest of the decoration on the page bases. So there we have that. Give it a nice, good burnish. If you need to wipe it, you can. And then the next two ends. Okay. And you're going to see there's just a little bit of overlap in the corner where we mitered it, but that would have been a lot more cardstock if we hadn't cut away a lot of the cardstock. So now there's just a little bit of overlap, but it does guarantee that the chipboard is 100% covered and you're not going to see any black when this is done. And it's going to remain relatively flat because there's so little overlap. So there's that. Okay, last edge. Okay, so the liquid adhesive helps it to be permanent. It helps to soften this chipboard edge a little bit too. And the dry adhesive helps it to grab real quickly so that we can just continue to move on as quickly as I have been. Because sometimes liquid adhesive, it can take a moment to dry 100% for sure, and it can even take a short moment to grab really. So it might slip and slide on you before you're done moving on to the next one. So at the moment we have really pointy, sharp corners, and one thing I've gotten in the habit of doing is just tapping those corners out, because it helps to just soften that a little bit. And I learned this from a bookbinder. Das Bookbinding does a lot of like hand sewn books and restorations and things like that, and that's just a little trick that I learned from him. Kind of takes out that really sharp corner and blunts it a little bit. So that's totally optional, but I kind of just like it. Okay, so I've got that ready, and I'm gonna decorate it really simply. I've got this fun Christmas tree here, so I'm gonna use this to decorate, but I'm gonna leave that to the end. So just like I want to leave the decorating the page bases to the end as well. Now with the inside, this piece I've cut, this is a sheet of that pearlescent card from the Your Paper Insider box number 13. And inside front, inside back are going to be the same. And it's this really soft peachy pinky color, which I think will be kind of, it's a nice subtle neutral. And they'll just do a good job of cleaning up, hiding all of those inside edges there. So here I'm going to do, this is double-sided, so you don't have to worry about the good side. But as I mentioned, I like putting my double-sided adhesive all the way to the outer edge, as close to it as I can manage. And in this case, you'll see why it can be helpful to have glue all the way to the edge like this, because this is just going to sit on top of that inside front cover, and it could actually snag on something. So if it starts to lift away, it's going to start to lift away most likely from those outside edges, especially if it does snag against something. So it's nice if you can just create a really nice seal so that no air gets in. So that's the hope with getting adhesive all the way to the edge like that. And then just to make sure that it's a really nice permanent hold, I'm going to put a little bit, you don't need a lot of dry or liquid adhesive because it's strong stuff, liquid adhesive. So you can see I just put a light squiggle, and I'm going to do my best to center this. So this piece has been cut to just shy of A2. So it's A2 in height, 5.5 in height, but in the width direction, it's been cut to 1/8 shy. So it's actually 4 1/8 as opposed to 4 1/4. And this is a little bit crooked. Before I burnish, just barely touched, I can still save it, I think. Okay. Whew. This is really strong dry adhesive, but I did touch it a little bit, so I'm just gonna put a little bit more liquid adhesive. Anytime you touch your adhesive, I try not to touch it at all, because if you do, you start to take away a little bit of its strength. with, you know, whatever oils are on your fingers or any skin cells and things like that. So I'm gonna freshen up my adhesive with some liquid glue, and that's also gonna give me a little bit of wiggle room to get this placed and centered. This is the front inside cover, so I do want to get it nice and centered. Okay, that's good. And give this a really good burnish. Really make sure I've got that well secured down. Okay, so there we have it. Okay, next step is to actually bind this. Now I'm gonna punch these kind of separately. I can probably punch all of my pages at the same time, but I'm gonna make myself a template just to make sure that everything looks the way that I would want it to look. So to create a template, really easy. So I've just cut out of just plain scrap paper, cardstock, copy paper, whatever you want, whatever you've got. And the only thing that you want to do is cut it to the same size as your pages. So this is A2, 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2. And then the cover, now I actually measure to fit because the chipboard started at 5 3/4 and 4 3/8 wide, but once you wrap paper around it, it actually can get just a smidge larger. And so at the end of the day, if you want to approximate, you want your template to approximate your pages as closely as possible. So I'm gonna, this is 5 1/2 this way. That's the height, that's the length that we are going to bind. So it'll be like that. And in the end, our page, let's actually measure this because I cut it to fit against my covers after they were already wrapped. So at the end of the day, it's only a smidge beyond 5 3/4. So we'll just consider it 5 3/4. Okay. So now with the universal cinch, I've been doing a lot of A2 size little mini notebooks. So I know this will punch fairly centered, putting it at the 1/2 inch mark here. So I made sure to pull out the number 6 peg because we're not going to need that set of holes. And my question is going to be, can I center my pages within my cover since the cover's larger? So let's just punch this set of holes first. Then you'll see you've got, that's what the holes are going to look like when we bind it on that edge. Now what this says to do is put your template to the closest 1/4 inch, and if it's 3/4 inch, there's a line for it right here. And this will be the first time I'm punching something at 3/4 inch. So let's find out what happens. Hopefully this is going to be centered still. That peg is still out. All the holes in theory should line up. And when they do, the hope is that, this is just a printable, but the hope is that these will be centered. And it isn't quite. Oh, that's such a bummer. If you look at it, there's actually, I've lined up the holes. So they're as lined up as I think they'll be. There's a little bit of cardstock here and a lot more on that end. So what I'm gonna have to do then is I'm gonna have to line this up. We're gonna have to improvise a little bit. So if 5.5 is like this, I mean, in theory, this would have been just 1/8 of an inch. So if you just scooch this down 1/8 of it, I feel like that should have worked. Why didn't it? I'm gonna try it again. Scooch this down to 3/4 and punch. Line it up. Yeah, it's still not perfect. If I line the holes up perfectly, I still have more cardstock on this end and less on that end. So if I had to adjust this, what I would want to do is, I think I just need to nudge it down like a smidge more. So because of that, I want to give myself like I only have to punch the covers twice, but I want both of the covers to obviously match up. And because it's medium weight chipboard, I need to punch them separately. I can't punch them both together. So what I'm gonna do is put a bit of washi down and have this serve as a mark. So I just need to go a smidge beyond where they tell me. And I'm just eyeballing it for now. And I want to try this again, so I'm going to trim that off before I commit to that line. So I'm just going to trim the holes off and punch again. This time what I'm going to do is I'm not going to line it up to the 3/4 inch line. I'm going to line this up against my washi. Okay, so, and maybe it's off because, you know, my cover is going to be a little bit larger. Oh, yes. See how this centers it a little bit better? That's what I'm looking for. The same amount on that end as there is on this end. So that's going to be much better, I think. And this does line up with my covers better. So you could see it was just like a smidge beyond 5 3/4, but it, at the end of the day, kind of matters. All right, so that is the game plan. So now let's go ahead and punch. I actually think it probably could do like at least 3 of these at a time, but I'm just gonna go with 2 at a time. And we want to make sure that we're punching on the open end, not the folded end, because it's the binding that will close off this pocket. And these are cut to 5.5 tall, so I'm just lining it up at the 1/2 inch line. And I'll go ahead, make sure everything's pushed deep. And then have that. Same thing for the next 2. Line it up at the 1/2 inch. And last 2. Make sure everything's flush against the back. Okay. All right, so then what I want to do is I want to punch my covers, but one at a time, and I am actually going to punch. It might not look, a lot of times the back side doesn't look quite as good, but all the same, I'm going to start with the back cover, just in case if anything, if I had to redo it, I don't mind redoing the back cover. And but what I want to make sure of is that I punch this in the same sort of direction as I've been punching everything else. So everything else was punched like this, and then that way, whatever spacing. Oh look, I could do this. Line that. Interesting. Because if this was lined up like that. Because in theory, this inside is 5.5. And you can kind of see if I line this up with our 5.5, it does come pretty much where my washi is. But let's use the washi line because that's what I've got for myself. So I want to make sure that as this is going in, that it's nice and flush to the back. I'm going to push this up against my washi line here because we made our template. So let's trust the template and let's go. Okay, so it punched through medium weight chipboard just fine, and it actually looks good on the back too. Okay, so let's see. If we hold up our pages, see how centered that is? That's green and green. Here, let me do this. Take a red page against the green, and you can kind of see it lines up almost perfectly with this A2 panel here. So, yay! That looks great. Now I can punch my front cover, feel much better having done it once with the back cover. So that's why I like to start with the pages, like the thing that's going to cost you the least if you had to redo it. It helps you to kind of build up confidence in whatever it is you've set as your template. In this case, my washi line here. So here's the front cover. And this went through specialty cardstock, medium weight chipboard, and then another layer of specialty cardstock. So quite bulky this, but it's beautiful. I think I'm going to start with the dark green against the gold. And look at that. See how nicely centered that is? Okay, really happy with that. So the order of my pages will be dark green, red, then light green, so that by the time we get to the dark green cover, we've got some contrast there. So really happy with that. Now I need a bit of wire, and we're actually going to bind it together now so that I can see how this looks on the coil as I'm decorating. I am just about positive that this is 3/4 of an inch wire, but I do love that the universal punch comes with this measure. So you just set your loop through, and whichever one it kind of, snugly fits through, comfortably fits through, but not like with a lot of extra, that tells you the sizing. So this is 3/4 of an inch. That's exactly what I was hoping. And on the other side, so if you know this is 3/4 of an inch, it tells you like this is how thick of a notebook you want to make. And so this is well within that thickness, but I don't want to make the same mistake as I did before, because yeah, this can fit comfortably in 5/8. It can fit comfortably in 1/2 inch, but once you get some pages and decorations and you start filling it out with photos, it's going to want to expand a little bit. So you want to give it the space. Give it space so that it can grow. So in the beginning it might look like it's a little bit, like the wire's too big for the number of pages you've got on there. But functionally, I think once it's all completed and decorated, it's gonna make a lot more sense. So what I like to do is I want to hide the cinched ends on the inside of my notebook so that it's not visible on the outside and so that it can't snag on the outside. So now you really want to make certain that you have these in the order and the orientation that you want. This double triple check should have happened before you punch the holes, but it's never too late to just make sure you don't have something that was punched upside down accidentally. But all of our thumb notches are on the top. All the open ends that we punched with the cinch are on the left. And front to back cover, I have it in the order that I want. Now, what I want to do in order to hide the wires on the inside, I want to order this from front to back cover and then swing the back cover as if it was actually bound all the way to the front. So now we're looking at the inside back cover. And with that, we can start to put it onto the wire. So I'm just gonna start here. And it'll go a little something like that. Then the front cover. And this is going to be, there we go. And then the back cover. It should be 10 loops because this is 2-1 pitch wire. And what we're binding is 5.5 inches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Good. And now that all the loops are in, I can actually just snip off the excess with wire cutters. If you have die snips, you can use die snips as well. That should cut through this wire just fine. And so let's go ahead and snip it right here. Okay, that's my last loop that actually went through. So I'll give that a snip. And I can definitely make another album. I'll save this for actually that second album that I started. All right. So now we just want to cinch this closed. So all you have to do is make sure that when you put this to the back of the machine here, you want to set the dial to the correct diameter of your wires. So the last notebooks that I've been making have been at 1/2 inch, but this is 3/4 inch. So I need to push down and turn until I get to 3/4 inch, because if I left it at 1/2 inch, it's going to crimp it down further than necessary. And it's going to misshapen the wire. So that's set at the correct diameter. And then when I put this in, I want to make sure that the two open ends, that they hit the back wall. And it's all making good contact. So just take your time getting it set in there, hold it nice and comfortably, and then using the same handle that I used to punch, I'll use that And as I pull that down, this is going to go down too. But it won't go any further than 3/4 of an inch. And that way it brings those loops perfectly to meet up with one another. It's just like oh, that is really perfectly nestled in there. And so now you can see that the ends, those open ends, that's on the back inside cover. So when we look at the outside of our notebook / mini album, it's all really nice and neat, and there aren't those open ends that can potentially snag on anything. And in fact, you don't even see those open ends until you get to the very end of your album, and that's where they live. So so that's why I like to do all of my albums that way. Okay, so now that we have our album cinched, that's basically, the core of the album done. And so now we can start to decorate. So here's my plan for decorating. I did already create or die cut. This is from a Hero Arts die set. If it's still available, I'll link to it in the description box below. And what I did was, this is one of those fancy specialty papers from the Your Paper Insider Box 13. And for the cover, I'm just going to leave it like that, really nice and simple. But I'm going to bring that that look into the inside pages, because that die set actually has 2 dies. Well, really 3. There's big Christmas tree, small Christmas tree, and a little star. And so what I want to do is, for each page, I am going to, I wanted to show you this also. So this specialty paper, the red one, it's white core. And if it bothers you to have white core, because you can kind of, well, I don't know if you can. I can. But if you look at these on the page, you can kind of see the white of this one. So if that bothers you, just take a black pen. You could use a Sharpie. This is a acrylic paint marker, and it's not a very expensive set either. So I don't worry too much about ruining kind of the brush tip. I wouldn't use your most favorite marker if you're worried about the tip, but because I just am coloring these edges in and giving them a black core instead, so that the white isn't visible, and that way it doesn't detract. So I've already done that on all of the others. For the gold cardstock, I actually, instead of black, I used a gold pen. So there's that. I used this metallic for the gold. All right. So with that done, I want to make this so that I can give it as a gift. So what I want to do is, I've already done a little bit of a prototype. So it's always really nice to do prototypes just so that you can see how things look and flesh out your idea before you start to kind of glue things down. So my plan is, for each of the pages, I've already picked out color. So the red is going to go onto this darker green, the gold is going to go onto the red, and this green kind of glossy, all of these were from box 13. So they're gonna go like that. But I want to make this easy, especially if I'm not using an album myself. What I like to do is make it really easy for somebody to tuck a photo in and not have to like have any special glues or anything like that. Now here's one thing I didn't really think too hard about, but you might want to take into consideration if you're going to make your own. When I punched the thumb notch, I centered it on this 4 1/4 width page. When you look at your album, depending on how you look at it, just let me know what your eye sees. Sometimes I'm actually more inclined to disregard this portion to the left of the page. So in this case, let me measure. It's probably like what, 3/8 of an inch or so between the left. Yeah, it's exactly 3/8 of an inch between the left edge and then the edge of the holes. So if you see things that way, just as I do, and you wanted to center this photo mat, it would look more like maybe something like that, which then means that the thumb notch is no longer centered because I centered the thumb notch on the entire width of the page. So, it's a question of whether you want to keep everything centered on the full page or, what looks best to you. For me, normally it would be centering it without consideration for the rest of the paper beyond the holes. But here's my thinking. My thinking is that this little photo mat's going to be here. And then I'll show you how I did that corner. But I'm going to put a little tree in the lower corner here as a tuck spot, so that I can actually glue down the white mat and leaving space for somebody to tuck a photo in behind here. And then they would tuck this opposite corner down here. So when I glue this down, I'm only going to glue the tree down along the right edge and the bottom, giving plenty of room for you to kind of slip a photo behind there, and that will hold the photo down. The white cardstock is going to get actually adhered to the page itself, and that way you can actually have a nice little frame around your photo. So you can decide if you like mats, photo mats that are white or black, whatever looks the best, or maybe another specialty cardstock. So whatever you'd like. I cut this so that somebody who wants to print I think this is a very common wallet size, 2.5 by 3.5. But in any case, if I'm giving this away, I would give it away with this as a template, so that they know the size to cut their photos down to if they need to cut their photos or print their photos to that size. And if it comes to it, they could even use it to cut against. So put this up against their photo and actually trim against it. Now, it just so happens that, I like to make photo albums and stuff. So I have this punch, which is just something I got off of Amazon. And you just put a corner in, and you could do this on all 4 corners or just 2 opposite corners if you wanted. And what I did was I, knowing that I want to set this mat for 2.5 by 3.5, I punched the corner, and then I looked at how much of a border does it have, and then I just trimmed this piece of cardstock down. It ends up being a weird size. Oh no, it's 2 3/4 by, it's actually just a smidge more than 3 3/4. Not really too sure why. It probably could have been just 3 3/4, but I've cut the whole stack that way. and I just need to punch these corners. So I'll punch everything in the upper left, and I'm gonna do a lot of this off the page, or off camera, but I'm gonna do one so that you can see. And I'm gonna start with the back most, work my way forward so that, you know, the very first one you see is gonna be like the best one, you know, that you make in theory. So I'm all the way back here at the very last page, and what I want to do is get some double-sided adhesive behind here. So this is a little bit tricky. First off, if this is a photo mat, which it is, you do want to make sure that you're using adhesive that is archival safe. So just make sure whatever you use that it's friendly to photos, so that photos do not yellow when they were placed in here. And the other tricky thing is that I'll show you this once I get this edge in. Okay, and we can put a little bit here too. Now, when it comes to this corner, there's a couple things that a couple ways somebody could put their photo in. They can weave it through like this, so that there is that little bit of white strip, or I think more likely this will be easier. So depending on what you anticipate somebody doing, or you know what you want to encourage somebody to do, that's why it's nice to have the template so that you can have one set and kind of placed the way that you think might look nice, and that way they know how to do subsequent ones. But I rather like the look of this. And so when you go to the back, you need to make sure that you don't put any adhesive where you see black, because clearly the photo needs to be able to go there. That doesn't leave a lot of room on this outer edge because of that thin mat. So that's a little bit, you don't want to leave it unattached though, because it'll just be kind of loose and it can actually lift. So I happen to have, 1/8 inch adhesive, but if you don't have this, you might need to use a little, like a thin bead of liquid adhesive to keep this corner adhered down. And once that's set, I'm going to take that out and then just burnish. And then you can position this however you would like onto your page. And I am going to put a little bit of liquid adhesive also, just to give myself a little bit of wiggle room as I place it, and also to really make sure it's nice and permanent. So I've lifted all of the liners. Oh no, these two. Okay. Just a thin squiggle of liquid adhesive. And I'm going to position this pretty much centered on the page. So I'm looking at the center of my thumb notch and aiming for that to be the center of my panel. If you feel like you need to make sure it's really nice and straight, you can bring a T-square ruler here and butt it up against that. That looks really good to me. And the nice thing about having this sort of binding is that I can actually bind all of this and still be able to burnish really nicely, because I can lay just this one page here and it's still really super flat. So next I am going to get my tree on here. And the tree I did also line with black acrylic because it is going to also be white core. And see, with the tree on this side, it helps to, I feel like because there's a little bit more weight here, it helps to kind of distract from the fact that, you know, you actually see more green here than you do on that side. At least my eyes do. But the idea is that we're going to tuck this in, and you want to make sure you can still tuck that in. And then, or maybe first you would tuck in behind here and then tuck in there. So in theory, it's going to sit a little something like that. So when I put my adhesive down, I just want to make sure that I only put adhesive where the photo will, you know, clearly be, you know, away from. Basically, I'm going to aim to just put adhesive where this is going to hit my page base. And then I know I'm going to be really clear of the photo. And that's just going to take a little bit of eyeballing. So just draw a straight line down from whatever line you estimated. So there's that. And then I know the trunk was definitely hitting just the page base, and there was just a sliver of the bottom of the tree. So I think that's going to be good. And I don't want to accidentally glue that in. So there we go. And this has a glossy finish to it, so I don't want to burnish too hard on the front side without having a little bit of protection. So I'm going to put my soft shop towel on top so that I can still burnish. Okay, and let's test it out. So that's going to go in, and then we tuck that in and center it. So that's how my pages will look. I think that's really super adorable, and it's a really simple album, but I think sometimes simple is really nice because it just makes it easier for somebody to actually fill this with photos, because I kind of feel like there's already enough of a barrier to getting your photos printed in the first place. So once you're past that hurdle, getting it down to size or just printing it to size hopefully is your biggest hurdle. And then actually filling, maybe the hardest thing will be picking just 12 photos to fill this album with. But what I'm going to do is I am going to continue on. Front and back will get the same treatment. Now on the back, I'm going to do, you know, the opposite. So I'll put a tree on this edge. So then what I want to do is have the slots kind of opposite like that. So it'll be mirrored. And when you look at two pages, so this is going to be the back. When you have two pages in a 2-page spread like this, it'll kind of look like that. So they'll be mirrors of each other, which I think will be really cute. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead, take a moment and do all of the pages, give them all the same treatment, and then I'll come back and show you a final flip through. All right, friends, here is my final album. And, well, actually, it's just missing one thing. I just need to cut the rest of the photo mats, which I think I will leave. Well, I haven't decided if I'm just going to leave it plain white cardstock like I have it here. But I have figured out, you know, a good size for it. So that tucks in really nicely. And then you have that little bit of a thumb notch to grab hold and pull it out. If you're wanting to make this, I cut this to 3 3/4 of an inch wide by 5 inches tall. So You could probably get something a little bit larger than this. I just feel like this fits very comfortably inside. It's really easy to pull in and out without too much hassle. And there we have it. So we've got our final really simple album. I've got the nice little template here, which I'll probably put on the first page. I just wanted to kind of just leave this in here somewhere in the middle, so it wasn't the first thing that you see. But if you're gonna give it as a gift, I would definitely recommend putting this right up front so that it's really obvious before they get too far along. They know exactly how to cut down their or what size to cut down the photo. And yeah, I love how it turned out. It's such a simple album to make. You could even I don't sell at craft fairs, but I'm always thinking about crafters out there who do sell at craft fairs or sell their makes on Etsy. And whenever you're selling something handmade, of course, part of the calculus of, you know, what you price something at and the profit that you could potentially make really depends on how much goes into it. Not a lot of cardstock, so we have 1, 2, 3 sheets of 8.5 by 11, 2 pieces of medium weight chipboard, a little bit of cardstock to cover those with, not a full sheet, so you've got leftovers. You know, plenty of white cardstock. You can get I think I was able to get 8 of these per US letter sheet of paper. So you could get 8 of these photo mats. Really easy. So it's like less than 2 sheets of white paper. And then of course, you need, if you do have a pocket page like I do and you want to do a little insert like this one, then this would be maybe another quarter sheet. So you would need another you know, 1.5 sheet of white cardstock for those. Not a ton, and pretty easy to make. If you didn't have the little trees, you could take the same punch that I have and punch in the 2 opposite corners, and then they can tuck, you know, 1 corner here, 1 corner there, and that's plenty secure to hold, especially a small 2x3, you know, 2.5 by 3.5 photo. I just thought it would be really fun and festive to have the little tree act as a tuck spot, and it adds a little something festive to each page. But if you're making this for other times of year, or just as a general purpose album that's not themed, which probably, you know, might sell better, you certainly could just do 2 slots like that and make it in no time. So part of your calculus when you're selling anything is, you know, how much labor is it? How much time of yours is it? And this takes very little time really for an album. There's definitely albums that can be much more involved than this, but I love how it turned out. I'm really loving the universal cinch. One of the things I wanted to explore doing was how to cinch a project where my covers are a different size than my pages, which is the case with this album, where that way the pages fit entirely within the covers, but also very centered within that cover. So it worked out really well. It was pretty fun, pretty great. And so I love how this turned out. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. I'm going to probably give this as a gift, and I still have to finish that second one. So follow me on all the socials if you want to see how that one turned out. I probably won't have a video on it, but I'll maybe post a reel or something on Instagram and a short here on YouTube. Thanks for checking out my video today, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.